most standout story in my mind around my journey with collaborative family law, and I do think journey is such an appropriate word with family law because a lot of us are involved for personal reasons. But the most standout story for me would be when I was nominated for Small Business Leader of the Year in my town. And the reason that I talk about that is not to talk about my successes, but instead of to talk about the responsibility that I felt whenever I won something that I really, didn't think that I would win based on my age and level of experience at that point. And so I was in the running for Small Business Leader of the Year. It's a chamber thing. And I had started my law firm straight out of law school. I'm one of the only first collaborative practicing attorneys, never did anything else, started my firm day one with collaborative family law because I really believed it would fix a lot of the problems from my own childhood and my parents' very, very adversarial divorce and relationship. And so, I started my firm and I was very active in the community, but I had no idea that I would be nominated for such a standout award so early on. And my competitors were both men who were twice my age, who had businesses for 3 times as long as I had been in business, and even, for longer than I had even been alive. And it was actually the number of years that they had been handing out the award was the number of years old that I was. And so it was kind of wild to, and it was very much like, it's a surprise. You didn't know who was going to win. So everybody's in the room together. And when they called my name, I was incredibly emotional. And so when I went to the stage, I was very real about what happened in my life and what this meant to me to receive something like that for a career that had been based completely on passion. And the entire room was crying. Every bank CEO, every hospital chief of staff, and then droves of people came up to me after winning and with tears in their eyes said, "Where were you for my parents' divorce? Where were you for my divorce?" And I felt in that moment that I really did want to be there for each one of those people, but I didn't know how to replicate myself fast enough to be able to do that, since not very many family law attorneys are as committed to collaborative family law as I am. And so in that moment, I decided to write the book and try to give people what I had given them that day in my story of how I had gotten there, and to be, as real as I could be and as vulnerable as I could be about what it felt like to go through the level of intensity that it was of just knowing that your parents hate each other and knowing that, those portions of yourself you think that they hate too. And there's a huge, I do this huge body of work of adult children of divorce because that is my passion. And that's what I'm trying to expose is whenever you are so adversarial with the family unit, what happens to children in that level of abandonment and the attachment theories that are very much involved with that are generational. They reverberate for generations. And it has been my mission to change how divorce is handled in America and to change the generations in my own family, starting with me.
So hello, this is Gina and Don with Focus Healthy Family.
This is podcast number 23.
And today we're talking with Ashley-Nicole Russell, who has her own law firm, Collaborative Family Law, and is also the co-founder of the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network. But before we really get into talking, let's take a break for our sponsor, and we'll be back.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
Simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And we're back. We're back with Ashley-Nicole Russell, and we're talking about her efforts to change the way the world sees divorce. And she's making some big changes in people's lives because of that. She has written a book, The Cure for Divorce Culture. She is also, again, the co-founder of the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network. So welcome, Ashley-Nicole. We're so glad.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely. Happy to be here.
And thanks for sharing your story. That was very touching. I got goosebumps as you were talking about the people coming up to you after you spoke to accept the award that, wished you had been there for them, because that is such a common theme, right? We talk to friends and people all the time about their parents' divorce and how much it affects them. It does infect.
Infects is also a very appropriate slip there.
So I guess our first question is just in sum up how you got into this type of law. You mentioned it in your story as far as, but if you want to elaborate on that a little further.
Absolutely. So my parents had a pretty tumultuous divorce. And I would say that, they did eventually settle outside of court, but that was what had been built between the two of them, the level of hatred and animosity and just this culture of hatred just kind of ensued through my life, and it infected my graduations and my holidays and just my entire stability. So when I went to college, it was to never return again to the battle zone of Stanley County, which is where I'm from. And I did not ever return again. And I never went back for the summers. I worked. I never, I've not crossed the threshold of the county line, and probably it's been a while now since I've been back there. And it's really sad because that is my home. But it was so marked with devastation that it was something that I knew in order to have a meaningful life moving forward that I needed to be able to fix that. I am actually divorced and remarried, and now I have a 1-year-old, and the husband that I have now, I really never imagined that I could actually be blessed with a relationship like that, with a family that he has of people who have been married for generations, and they don't really understand what divorce is. And you can really kind of tell they're all whole people. So it's really amazing the contrast that I've seen in my clients' lives, in my life, and the work that I do. Like you said, the statewide organization NCCAN is a nonprofit that I helped to found with a lot of other brilliant minds in the state. And then, of course, I'm a board member for National Parents Organization to work on the national level. And so I got started because my parents had a bad divorce, and I was a certified district court mediator in undergrad, and I learned conflict resolution, real skills to deal with conflict. And I was fully graduated from high school and in college by the time I actually learned or had a model that could show me effective conflict resolution. And that was a big deal for my life because it allowed a place of peace that I had never known before. And so I chased that. And in chasing that, it led me to law school. And in law school, I went to a place where I could do mediation because I was very drawn to mediation. And I happened to be the first law clerk for Separating Together, which was a collaborative group back then, and specifically Mark Springfield, who was one of the founders of collaborative in my state. And I started law school straight out of the bat with collaborative, and most people believe that that's impossible. And in fact, everybody told me that it was, and that I was crazy, and they thought I was cute for what I was going to practice. And I took all of that as a burning fuel for myself to be able to passion forward. Now, in retrospect, when I sit where I'm at now and look back on that, I must have lost my mind a little bit, but I did it not knowing with the craziness that I was going to go forward with. But it's been beautiful. And like I said, my community in Greenville recognized me, and then it's been, one thing after another, Forbes article, and it's just been it's been really amazing. I have truly turned, like my good friend Michelle Dempsey says, the lemons of my childhood into a lemonade adult life.
I'm just curious, you said you hadn't stepped back into Stanley County. Do you still see your parents? And
So I have a very estranged relationship with my parents. We've worked many years to try to fix that. And the actual intro to my book, I go ahead and have a message to them because I knew reading the book would be difficult for them. And it definitely was. But I do not want to have an effect on my child not having a relationship with them. So my husband is very involved in making sure that they're able to see her. And that's something that's been very important to me, is not to pass down, animosity and hatred and those types of things. And so it's really important for me to be embracing of their relationship with her to the extent that they ever want to have that. And so, but my own personal relationship with them is very distant, very, very, very disconnected. And that's all just for self-preservation. And it's,
Wow.
Unfortunate. I can't imagine if my own daughter were to do that when she became older, and the level that she would maybe be pushed in order to get to a place like that. And it is hurtful for everybody. It's hurtful for me. I feel very hurt by it a lot, but it is what's best. But it's my goal to make sure that all of these other parents are not in this position with their children, and that all of these children are not in that position with their parents, as much as I can help it.
Yeah, you're touching on the generational trauma, and we've talked about that in other contexts and other interviews, and how you really broke, the cycle with this whole practice you started for your own self and for so many other people, right? And how important those boundaries are that we need to set when even our people we love are interfering with us having a healthy life and moving forward. So
Absolutely. And it's not that as a parent we can be perfect. Every child blames a lot on their parents, but so it's not a level of perfection. It's just a level of respect. It's just for parents to respect each other. You have to respect the other person, because a child sees that you are part of them and they know that they are part of you. And it's just something that a child knows as part of their identity. In order to protect that feeling of identity and feeling of self-worth, we have to protect respect between parents, whether you're in the same house or not in the same house. And I think that's the greatest goal that I have, is to get that message out. And collaborative is a huge, huge part of that. And also the shared parenting movement. And there's a lot of really good going on in this country right now around these two things. It's been just letting parents know it doesn't have to be a battle in court. You don't have to be battling each other in court. You can choose to stay outside of court. And just bringing that awareness. And a lot of people have been able to kind of find that. Now, you can't control the other person. And if they are headstrong into court, there's really nothing you can do, but you can control yourself. You can control your reaction. You can control how you speak of that person when you're in your child's presence. And that's all that we can do, any of us, is to be the best version of ourselves that's possible.
So maybe take us through an example of how they go through the process, and what is the process that and then and tie under that, what's the difference between that and I'll just
going through the court system,
going through a regular divorce, I guess, or whatever.
Well, there's really kind of 4 models, and now each state is completely different. I have to say, I practice in the state of North Carolina. You cannot take my advice as legal advice, anybody who's listening, and I'm not, I'm not giving anybody legal advice, and I can't tell you specifically what your state's going to do, because I only am licensed to practice in North Carolina. But in general, there are 4 concepts. So there's settlement negotiation, which is You to your own devices, like you're on a car lot going back and forth. Here's my offer. Here's my counter offer through the attorneys. There's mediation where you sit with a neutral third party who's not representing either one of you. There's collaborative where you're sitting with both of your attorneys who are trained in collaborative practices who are representing you, and you're all sitting in the room together. So that's the big difference, is each of you have your own attorney in collaborative. So you're not relying on no advice or not being given any type of instruction or not having an advocate. Instead, you have an advocate. You just have an advocate that's very well trained in the same principles that a mediator is trained in. And then litigation is when you go to court. And so one of the biggest things to think about in litigation and settlement negotiation is that the telephone game we were taught in grade school is very destructive. So if you tell your attorney something and your attorney tells the other attorney, and then that attorney tells your spouse, it will not be the same conversation as if you spoke to your spouse. And so that we know from childhood. And so if we think about the collaborative process, the hallmark of it, that is the most efficient process, because everybody who needs to make a decision is sitting in the same room together, having the conversations in a protected atmosphere called the container, where you can have those very intense conversations with people who can help you communicate in an effective way. And I think that's the biggest difference between collaborative and all the other ones. At any moment, if you're considering divorce or separation, you eventually have to have a consult with some attorney. You have to know what's going on in your state and what you should be doing. It is my very sincere advice, just as a person, that you have that consult before you ever go anywhere. It should be very early on, because most people don't realize that before you ever separate, generally you can come up with your agreement and then sign the agreement and separate. And that's the most amount of stabilization for everybody involved. Everybody knows what they're getting and not getting at that point. It's not going to be roses and unicorns. This is not, the most pleasant experience to go through a divorce, but it absolutely can be managed. But if you go to litigation, you have no control. You make no decisions. You have no control. It is not your decision. It is 100% in the hands of your attorney and the judge.
Well, in the collaborative container you talked about, do both attorneys have to be collaborative?
And what happens is they are both collaboratively trained. And then the biggest part is both attorneys must sign a collaborative pledge along with the two clients. And the collaborative pledge is what keeps the attorneys from going to litigation. So that's what allows there to be a flip in mindset to where everybody's on the same page. The attorneys and the clients are focused on settlement, versus if the attorney has not signed a pledge stating they're not going to go to court, then you're not going to have both attorneys being in the same mindset as the clients, because in reality, litigation is a highly profitable sphere for divorce attorneys. And that's just the reality of life. And I think it's something that should be considered whenever someone's making a decision as to which process they would like to choose. Not that the attorney's making only decisions based on the fact that they're going to pad their pockets, but they're not afraid of going to litigation for forever, because it's not a negative thing for them, like it is a negative thing for the client. So that's something that should be considered.
Thank you. So when people come to you, I'm curious, what are they kinds of things are they saying? What, are they coming to you specifically looking for collaborative law? And
I think most people are looking for mediation. We have the movie Wedding Crashers. That was a big deal, and a lot of people saw that. And those two guys were mediators. And so there's a lot of, big scenes that people can remember from that. And they kind of think that their divorce may be that same kind of way. And that's fine. That's a great model for people to understand that there is an option to do it outside of court, and I will say some of the most successful people in the world choose to handle all of their matters outside of court. And so it is an appropriate imagery that movie gives. And I think that it is something that people should learn from. If you hire an attorney to handle your speeding ticket, you don't expect to be in court for 6 weeks. You expect that the attorney is going to show up and handle it for you, and you're never going to have to deal with it. And I think people should really start to think about family law that way. Like, if you're hiring an amazing attorney, why are you then committed to 6 weeks out of work, in and out of court, on the stand, being berated by another attorney? That doesn't seem like that representation is advancing, your protection. And I think that if people would start to think of this as, I'm going to hire an attorney that's going to protect me from being exposed to that, the judges would really appreciate that too. Our judges here in North Carolina give large spiels before anybody even goes into court, because you have mandatory mediation here. And the judge comes in and says, you need to try to figure this out. You know your children better than I ever will. You're going to have a couple of hours with me to try to explain everything. And you're going to come in thinking that I'm trying to pick who's the best parent. And instead, I'm trying to pick who's the worst, who's the least of the worst parents, because I'm assuming both of you are bad parents if you're making it all the way to in front of me. And I think people, they kind of don't fully understand that. And so I do think that people who are coming to me are looking for a method to stay away from litigation, away from the place that they don't have control, away from the place where they can't make decisions, away from the place that's going to take them out of work. I mean, I do a lot of work with HR. This is a lot of work that's missed, a lot of productivity that gets to be messed with on the parents, where their minds are dealing with litigation. And so I will say that there's a big change in mentality of clients and people who are choosing a process. And a huge piece of that is we're now dealing with people like me who are adult children of divorce, who know what it was like to go through that as a child, who understand a whole nother level of perspective than their parents ever could. And now, because of that, are saying, I will absolutely settle this out of court. I will not go to litigation. That is not something I'm going to put my children through. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and talking about children, I'm kind of curious as what, like with the collaborative, what the children's involvement is in it, and do they have a say in it in some way? Because I remember a lot of the different movies where the judge will ask them, well, who do you want to stay with, or something like that, So do the kids have involvement in that procedure? Are they in the room talking too, or
So children in litigation absolutely can be interviewed by the judge. Sometimes that's in chambers. Sometimes that's on the stand, where they can actually be cross-examined by the other attorney. Talk about damage. That's very, very intense for a child to have to sit in front of their other parent and say, I don't want to be with you. Like, that is a very, very intensive thing. So collaborative does not involve that at all, and is in no way, shape, or form doing that process. Instead, if the parents would like to have their child's perspective, we involve child specialists who are specifically trained in child psychology to be able to sit with the children in their own spaces, completely away from any type of court setting or conference room or any attorneys or even their parents. They're in a playful setting where they're having a actual structured conversation, and then they take that information and then decipher that for the parents and come to the meeting with us, to where it's me and the other attorney and the mother and father, and then we'd have the child specialist there. And that conversation looks kind of like this. We start to discuss one parent wanting to move outside of the school district, and then the child specialist raises a voice of the child, meaning that they say, Mom and Dad, when you talk about separating me from my school, it makes me feel unbalanced and it makes me feel destabilized. And so the child specialist in that context is actually standing in place of the child, trying to help the parents understand, okay, well, when I talk to your child, the thing that came across to me as a professional is that the thing that they're looking for more than anything is stability of location. And so if that is what the person derived from their conversations with the child, then when they're in the room with the parents, they're trying to be that voice of what they saw as the children's interest. So it's a much different effect than someone coming in and saying, you're a terrible parent, you're an amazing parent, nix you, go with you, now everybody's going to be great. Yeah, that never happens. And so this format is really beautiful in that way. And one thing that I have seen that's been really powerful is when the parents get really heated with each other and they start being aggressive, like in the session with everybody there, because these are human emotions. I'm, as a collaborative professional, signing up to just swim in the toxicity of your divorce emotions with you. It's not like Candyland. And so, we're all in there together experiencing this incredible level of hostility. And so for a child specialist to pipe up and say, mom and dad, whenever you expose me to this level of intensity, it becomes hard for me to recognize what my own interests are and focus on school. And when you hear that as a parent, it's very like, okay, let me take a step back. Let me take a breath. Let me recenter on who I am as a person and what my priorities are. And that has a much greater effect on human behavior as a parent than being scolded in open court by a judge who doesn't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just real human behavior, human psychology principles that we study and implement. And it creates real results because people are putting their own priorities first.
I like that. I like that there's a professional involved that evaluates the child in a play setting to really get to where they're at so they don't feel that. I'm sure there's lots of pressure and lots of guilt depending on the age of the children that they're feeling about the whole situation. And so,
well, I do a practice helping parents through their anxieties and things like that. And I run into a majority of people that are still dealing with the fallout from their parents' divorces, even as old as 60 and 70 years old, they're still, they hadn't worked through it well enough. And that's what I help them to try to work through that. But
yeah, you had mentioned, I think, OCD. And when we were chatting before, I have multiple different types of practices. My practice is a collaborative family law practice, and I have helped other attorneys start practices who have litigation. And if you compare those children to the children out of my family's divorces, one of the things that children develop during this process in order to have a level of control over their life is a type of OCD, so that they know their own things that they're doing, they at least have control there, because everything else is so out of control. And I think that, and then to try to help a child get past that once they've started that type of behavior, and even if their parents are done being divorced, long after that, the parents are still dealing with that. And that's just one of the coping mechanisms that children develop to try to deal with the level of conflict and hostility that can come about whenever two people are separating. There's, in the collaborative practice, I have parents who will, want me to meet their children. They bring their children in. They're so excited about how well they're doing and how successful they are. And then when I see from these other attorneys that I help in their litigation practice, the children are pulling out their eyebrows, pulling out their eyelashes, pulling out their hair, banging their head against the wall, hurting themselves, and doing really poorly in school. The list goes on. And it is a very stark comparison to what happens. I mean, the number of colleagues that I have that are family law attorneys who have clients who have killed themselves, or clients' children who have killed themselves during the divorce process. And my book goes through a lot of those statistics. They're grueling, and they're hard to talk about and they're hard to stomach, but that is even more of a reason to get involved.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, those parents, they want the best for their kids, right? And even if they're going through a divorce, yeah, those are powerful statistics.
Well, and what we've learned out of it is a lot of these disorders, if they don't have family backing, if they don't have some kind of family support, helping them through this tough stuff, then suicide is a big part of that dynamic, and it's sad,
Yeah, the rate, is 30% higher into adulthood. So, and that's gauging for other issues and other family history. And so to think about that percentage rest for all of youth into adulthood, that it doesn't go away when someone ages out at 18. It's still going, I think that can be impactful for parents to hear and understand. And that's was the reason of putting all of that in the book. And the whole book is legally cited so that, all the research is there for anybody else to see. And at this point, I wrote that book in 2018, and just the amount of research that just NPO has put out in that amount of time. Emma Johnson has done a ton of research herself on this, on the effects of divorce and how women fare out of divorce when they have, shared parenting schedules and the children are able to have access to both parents. There's just so much research being done. And so my book really is has a lot of the longitudinal studies that we had over 35 years. So they're important, but there's even more stuff that's come out now. And all of it points to the same direction, which is that we have to reduce the amount of conflict coming out of family court.
Yeah.
Do you, I'm just in thinking about it, do you do anything for the after effect, for the after, in other words, you're helping them through the divorce and all, but do you help them kind of in any way plan like how to handle the future,
Yeah.
how to handle Christmases or whatever?
Right. So the separation agreement and property settlement, which is what you generally get out of the divorce, has a layout for everything. That's why you want to get that, because it's a structure. You don't want to just willy-nilly figure it out as you go on for the next 18 years. So it does have a structure for holidays and summers and all of that, even an introduction of third parties. The biggest thing that's going to happen is mom and dad are going to move on and eventually find other people. And then how do those people come into the mix? And so absolutely, we come up with that and have extensive conversations around it in the collaborative model. In the settlement negotiation model, you're not going to be able to talk about it as much. You're going to come to an agreement. You're going to make, you're going to stick to the agreement because it's a contract, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily as developed to have those types of hard conversations. In collaborative, we teach you how to talk to each other. We model for you effective communication. We're showing you what to do. And to take it a step further, you have built the container, and at any time you can come back to it. So we have people all the time who, once dad's about to get married, it's just not going great for the kids. It's not that mom's necessarily upset about it, but also the kids don't necessarily want another parent. Like, they're resistant to that just naturally. They always want their parents to get back together no matter what. And so we can come back to the container and the attorneys can be there, and we're not taking anybody to litigation, and we can talk through the process and what's the best model, and let's introduce on this day, and then let's no overnights until this amount of time. And, we can do all of that. And we do that in the collaborative process in the container. And so it is absolutely something that's built for you to be able to use over time. If you have a family business, you may not be able to immediately end the family business just because your relationship's ending. Maybe it needs to be a finalization and a winding out period of maybe 5 to 10 years. Well, what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years? Do we need to come back to the container so that you can go flesh the rest of that out? Absolutely available. And so the collaborative process, you're really building a team around you to help you get through one of the most monumental times of your life. It's like, if anybody's ever had a spouse or parent die, if you could assemble around you 3 people who knew what they were doing and help you to know exactly how to do the estate and this and that and the other, most people would do that just to have a set of advisor. Most people hire an attorney or deal with it in that way. And so this is really assembling that team around you to help you purposefully maneuver through the next set of steps that you're going to have to go to accomplish the legal event of having a divorce.
That's wonderful. Yeah, our business is modeled after collaborative, conscious, respectful parenting. So it's wonderful to have a collaborative divorce if that's where the relationship leads. And I love that it's an open process that they can come back to you as things evolve, at kids at different ages and different stages, things going on. That's
the imagery of it in and of itself, I think, is kind of powerful. So we all know what the imagery of a courtroom looks like. You come in, there's the attorneys in front of the bar. The rest of the people have to sit behind the bar. Once you're chosen to talk, you go sit in the witness stand. You're then cross-examined, answer to the judge, come sit back down. There's an opening statement, the middle part. There's a closing statement. Like, we know what that looks like. Okay. So people can imagine you arrive for your day in court. It's your custody hearing. You go through the metal detectors. You get searched. You are then led through a cascade of series of stairs and elevators until you go into a grand courtroom where everybody that you've ever met, maybe your plumbers there, and also your banker, and maybe your colleague who is also there. It's in an open forum. You walk in, your attorney is in front of the bar, you sit behind the bar. Eventually you're called, you meet your attorney up front, you go through an absolute gladiator style interaction. You are cross-examined, your character is under attack. You leave feeling completely downtrodden and like you've been exposed to a very intense system, because the court system is very intense. It is built for criminals and to make people whole again in the civil system. It's not built for families, but we've put it, I mean, we have to have some way to have regulation in a lawful society. That is very different than you show up at my office, which is a house. You are offered a bottle of water when you come in. There is spa music playing in the background. You're ushered to a conference room where there is a snack tray and a Keurig where you can make yourself some coffee. Your spouse, who you may even still be living with at the time, comes into the room. You have normal conversation about soccer or whatever, because you actually have lives that intersect with each other. So that's okay and normal. Mm-hmm. The attorneys come into the room with you. We sign a pledge saying that we're going to not go to court. We bring up spreadsheets onto the TV that's in the room for everybody to see. We have binders of information that we've collected before we get there that has everything you've ever accumulated during your marriage. We go through the spreadsheets, input the information together as a team, talk about the things that we already agree on, figure out the list of things we don't agree on, schedule the next session. Everybody shakes hands and has very cordial communication as you leave. You're only there for 2 hours at the most, or all of this happens on a Zoom call where you're in your pajamas the whole time. And, and you have your cup of coffee. Dramatically different. And so who is that also dramatically different for? Your kids. Because when you come home and you've been in a courtroom all day, you are ready to be Tom Cruise himself in the movie. Like, you are Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise is you, and you are just ready for battle, because that's what you've just absorbed all day. Mm-hmm. Versus if you are in a conference room, being collaborative, having very effective I statements, communication modeled for you all day, and you come home and it wasn't great and you cried and maybe felt very sad, but you also go home and you have had modeled for you all day effective communication and conflict resolution. So as a human, you naturally are going to model that. This is just human psychology. You see, like, it's just so common sense. It's beyond.
Right. Yeah, we talk all the time about the energy you bring home.
Yes.
Or how you start your day, how much it affects your kids.
Right.
And if you walk in the door and you're just griping and groaning, right?
Yes.
You're going to be surrounded by more of that. So you've already got the stress of this separation, divorce, whatever's pending. And so, coming home, I'm sure adds to that stress and trauma if you're dealing with the court system or a system that's not aimed at the collaborative process.
Have you thought about like adding massage into that?
Yeah.
Little pedicure or something.
They actually have this thing, Divorce Hotel, where that is part of it. So you go
really?
for a weekend and you and your spouse go, you both have a spa treatment. You have 2-hour sessions set up with your attorneys, but it's at a resort. So you have like an ability to kind of take it all in, and you get it done all in a weekend. Oh, wow. And I think that that's also great.
Huh. Man.
That's wonderful.
And here I was joking about it.
Yeah.
Well, you painted that picture, and it does, that's quite a different environment. And how wonderful to have those mediation skills and teach them to the couple going through it, right? That they're learning new skills as they're in the process of this. This is exciting. Neither of us been on that journey, and neither of us had parents that were divorced, which interesting, right? We've been married now 28 years. But it's so important to know this out there. We get lots of people coming to us for our classes and work that are either divorced or in the process of that, and wanting to improve communication with their kids, and knowing how much that plays into all of communication, right? I'm very curious, your business and you started is based out of North Carolina. Are there similar things across the country?
Yep, there's the International Association of Collaborative Professionals. So all the other states, if you're looking
Okay.
for someone, you can start there. I'm not saying that that's the end all be all and every single person on that list is 100% a collaborative attorney. I will say NC CAN, all of the people on that list are 100% collaborative attorneys. And that's NC dash CAN, like dash as in between 1 and 800, not the word dash written out.
Okay.
But so, and it's .org, so it's a nonprofit. And then IACP, like I said, but each state generally has their own network of collaborative professionals. And it is something that's really getting going. Now, I will say not all 50 states have accepted collaborative into their general statutes. North Carolina has. But not all of them have. The ABA is going to be, I think they have looked at having a uniform collaborative act in the past, and I think they're probably going to be looking at that again. So it definitely is a big topic right now, and it's getting a lot of traction. And it has been. I mean, I've been practicing now for over a decade, and I've been doing collaborative since the day I got my results back from my bar test that I absolutely passed. And so, I think that, or not the day after that, when I got my official license in, but since, I was able to practice, I have had a collaborative practice, and it's been for over a decade. And, a lot of people think that it's not something that can actually be done, that you can't actually make money and be an attorney and do this. And that's just not the case. I mean, I've grown from Greenville to Raleigh to Wilmington to Beaufort, have 4 offices now, and lots of, we have a full internship program and lots of young minds that we're helping to kind of wrap their heads around this too. And so it's been a beautiful journey, like I said, to start.
Yeah, that's exciting. And that, having interns, so you're spreading these ideas so future attorneys will have some, just be able to spread this and have these avenues for people all over the country.
I know you probably can't give advice, but maybe what would be, if somebody is at this place where they're trying to figure this out, what would you say? Maybe you could say what the first steps are, what they some ideas of things they could do or what they should do.
Yeah, you want to be finding appropriate resources. And so you want to, build, if you need your own therapist, you need to get that now. If you need your own divorce coach, like someone who's just helping you to process it, that may be a little bit cheaper than a divorce attorney, and then finding a collaborative attorney or a mediator and just having a consult with that person. If you feel like you want to understand litigation, you should be told about all different process options on a consult. That's what attorneys are supposed to do, is tell you about all of them. But if one of them gets left out from a consult and you feel like you need more, just make sure you're able to make an informed decision. You shouldn't just separate and then try to figure it out. I would not advise that. I would advise that you get your resources and information together up front. Truly try to find a collaborative attorney in the state that you're in, so you can at least hear about that process and what can be done before you start to step. But it is, in NC CAN, the way that we've set it up is we have this website that both clients can look at, that husband and wife can look at together. It's built for, we think we may be going down this path, so we are going to look at this website and then independently, choose these attorneys, or together choose, I'm going to pick this person, I'm going to pick this person, and do it together. We're not saying go to your separate corners and never talk again and let's have a boxing match. We're saying, you guys have built an entire estate together, so let's unwind that purposefully with both of you at the helm, figuring out where the ship is going to go next.
Wonderful. And you kind of touched on this, but anybody outside of North Carolina, because obviously if they're in North Carolina, going to your organization, but you've touched on it with looking for a collaborative lawyer, but are there any things in particular they should ask when looking for someone?
When they're interviewing attorneys?
Yes, to key in.
You should just know that who you're hiring should represent your values. If this person doesn't seem like they represent anything that you believe in, don't feel like you have to go forward with hiring them. Whoever's in front of you should be a reflection of you. Do they have the values that you have? That is important. Every attorney is not a shark and a snake. That's just not the way that it is. Most people think that. And yes, I can put that on if I need to, and most of us can, but we're not always in that form. And I think, some people they're like, oh, well, I just kind of thought all attorneys were that way. So I didn't really think past, this may not be the personality I want to deal with, And so I think that's a big part of it. You do need information. You do need to know about your finances. Yes, you may not be the person who handled that in your marriage. Well, if you're not going to be married anymore, somebody's got to handle it, and it's going to be you. So let's try to figure that out now. Like you need your tax returns. You just need to know what you've done in the past time that you've been married financially, if you don't already know, And so that information is information you're going to need. So go find it, like get you the information that you need. And a great way to do that is look at your credit report. And I think some people forget that they can do that and see kind of a picture of their life financially.
Right.
Well, and I'll remind the audience, we'll have information up about your book and about your practice up on the
links to all these organizations and things.
FocusHealthyFamilyPodcast.com. So
for people to be able to find.
And of course, I have a podcast, Divorce Healthy, and so would love for that and that was one of my, the things that I knew I needed to do after I won Small Business Leader was write a book and get this information out in a way that could be free. And so the podcast is a ton of information to help people have resources and understand that you don't have to pay, the tall fee that it is to talk to me on the phone. So,
and the name of your podcast again?
Divorce Healthy.
Divorce Healthy. What a great name.
And we'll put that up there.
We'll put all that up there. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Ashley-Nicole, it's been wonderful to talk to you. Your energy and your drive in doing this is wonderful, and I think it's going to be very inspiring for people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And yes, it's been, it's not always easy to go down this path for sure. Just because it's not, I would say that the family court system in totality does not necessarily, they're not so aware as most of the collaborative practitioners are. So it's not always easy, but passion work is not always easy. And this life was never promised to be easy. And so that's something that I'm okay with, because I sleep really well at night knowing that I take good care of my clients and I do good work. So
that's great. That's great. Wonderful. So thank you so much for everyone for listening to our podcast. That's our podcast for today. If you'd like to hear more, be sure to leave us a comment. And if you'd like what you heard today, check out our parent coaching program at FocusedHealthyFamily.com. Again, you can learn more about us. You can learn more about Ashley-Nicole. We'll share all of her resources. Follow us on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Gina@FocusedHealthyFamily. And remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.